far I want to go with this. Let's just stop at verse 10. I'm going to focus on the first verse, but first couple of verses, but I'm going to read through verse 10. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good report. Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. By faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh. By faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. For before his translation he had this testimony, that he pleased God. But without faith it is impossible to please him, for he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. By faith Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house, by which he condemned the world, and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. By faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for inheritance, obeyed, and he went out, not knowing whither he went. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in the strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. As we go through life, seems like we're just bombarded with things. I know in the advertising world, Philip would testify this, that the idea is just to bombard, get top of mind. They call it top of mind, where your particular brand is the first brand people think of when they feel they have a need and have to go out and purchase that. We had Bill Buseman. Do you know Bill Buseman? Peter and I sat in a meeting one time, and he said it's called top of mind, where your particular product or your particular service, you've bombarded and saturated the community with it, so that when someone needs their carpet cleaned, it's elite. Automatically elite. How many of you have a Kleenex here today? You have a Kleenex? Actually, you have a tissue paper. The brand of Kleenex. Now you talk about saturation. Okay. And so there's a lot of products like that we refer to it by its brand name, not so much as what it is itself. So top of mind. We're bombarded with so many things in the world that find themselves at the top of our minds. And it's not always a good thing. I know there's things that need to be near the top of our mind, of course, because there are things that are close to our heart, close to our passion and our emotion, and close to our needs. But there has to be room, there just has to be room at the top floor of our heart for God, because then everything below it, from the second floor on down, will make better sense. At least we can cope if that's the arrangement. If God's not in the building at all, then we're left to confusion of faces, as Daniel said. We get worn down, I know I do, by so much that's thrown at me, thrown at you. Sometimes we say, well, just stop this right, I want to get off. And we ask ourselves, people in general might ask themselves, is there anything in life that's real, that's genuine? Someone that's not on the prowl, on the take? Or a cheesy salesman?
My cheesy. Was that Gracie? Oh, yeah, Gracie.
I looked at Philip because he's in his business. He has to deal with cheesy salesmen.
Oh, nice save.
Yeah, good save.
Yeah,
Good
that's a
save.
good one.
We've all gone to that car lot and have had to deal with a cheesy salesman. In fact, there was a guy in reserve tried to sell us a van. a Volkswagen van one time. He did his best, try to sell Vicky and myself and 3 small boys a Volkswagen van. But we wouldn't have it. We bought a Voyager instead. But sometimes it is rough dealing with people that just, and things that just kind of throw us. But not everyone is on the prowl, not everyone's on the take. There is a genuineness that's implanted in the world. And the thing that I think we struggle with is that we are aware of both. We've grown up in a world that is fake, a world that is not genuine, a world that's on the take, on the prowl. And somewhere along our journey, and having been conditioned by all of this and shaped by all this, we met Jesus. And enters in reality, enters in truth, a new way and a new life. And so now, there's this other side to us, this other element that, on the one hand, throws in confusion. On the other hand, brings relief. I suppose whichever is present or predominant at the moment is where our focus is. If our focus is on the earlier elements, then it can be confusion. If our focus is on the newfound faith, then we find more relief in that rather than the confusion. But being human, we do experience both at any given time. But there is something and there is someone that we can feel that by investing into that it's a safe investment. It's a sound and solid investment. And that is our trust in the Lord. He's the only one that stands out. He's the only one that will never, ever let us down. Kids, I want you to remember that. Jesus is the only one who will never, ever, ever let you down. Now, people will disappoint you as you grow older. You'll find there'll be plenty of time for disappointments. But always hold on to the truth that Jesus never will disappoint. It's always an injection of some outside or external force that the world will offer you that brings the distrust and the heartache, never from Jesus himself. I know people think they got it figured out sometimes. I read the Proverbs here. It says, "There is a way that seems right unto a man." Seems right. But the end are the ways of death. And so just because it seems right and seems good doesn't mean that it's going to end well. We want things to end well. Well, here's our roadmap. Here's our roadmap for things ending well. It's all right here. It's the in-between. It's the now and before we get there that we're concerned about. Because it will end well if we follow the roadmap. It won't end well if we don't. The nice thing about it is that we are given a free choice. We're given a free will. So that in the very end, when Jesus is surrounded by his bride, and they're wearing the white robes, and they have a new name, a new identity given to them, that he can look out at their faces and know their history, know their walk, know their journey, know what it took to get them there. And he can smile because he says, you know, I know you're here. Not so much because I wanted you to be here, because you wanted to be here. That's what makes me so happy, he'll say. Because you're here because you wanted it. Oh, I wanted it for you. Oh yeah, bet on that. And I was there, I was pulling for you. But in the end, you had to run the play. 18T. Run the play. Remember I told you about that rock that they had X's and O's? And basically just one-liner, run the play. God can call the play, but we got to run it. And so as he looks out at those faces of his bride that he has rewarded for their efforts. They ran the play. They ran his play. Not their own play. There is a way that seems right to a man. There's a play that I think we should call in this situation. Well, is it the right play? Is it one that God ordained? Is it one that God would have called? Maybe not. But the end are the ways of death, of disaster. But we can trust God, which guides us toward developing a solid, sound, living faith. A genuine faith to live by, and that will reap great benefits. I want us to leave Hebrews for just a moment and go over to James chapter 2. 2:14 through 16. What does it profit, my brethren, though a man say he hath faith, and hath not works? Can faith save him? And what he's talking about, of course, is a faith without works. So you might let's just build a word here. Let's just say a workless faith. So you say you have faith with no works. Just a faith with no works, okay? So you've got a workless faith. Can that workless faith, that faith absent of works, save you? Now, in your mind, the purpose for which you are exercising a faith, of course, is to be saved or preserved. But in God's mind, it must have a caboose on the end of it. That train must have a caboose called works. And so that's what he's going to talk about. What does it profit? Will it get you what you want? Though a man say he have faith and have not works, can that type of a faith save him? If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto him, Depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding you give them not those things which are needful to the body, what doth it profit? Didn't profit them at all. Even so, faith, if it hath not works, is dead. It goes nowhere because it's by itself. Yea, a man may say, Thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, if that's possible, and I will show thee my faith by or through my works. I won't have to brag on a faith. I won't have to say, I have faith. A man may say, I have faith. You won't even have to say that. It will be obvious and evident by the works. You don't have to throw faith out there front and center. Faith will be kind of in the background. It'll be the works generated by that faith that'll be front and center. And people will then know that you obviously have a faith by your works. Now we know that we've talked about many, many times that there's more to the story and there's more to the picture than just faith works working together. Because we know that in that day many will come to me and say, have we not done wonderful things? And obviously the works were there. And he said, I never knew you. So they obviously, there was another element that they missed there. So putting everything together, it has to be proper works, of course. And so what we're after is possessing a true, living, dynamic, day-to-day faith. Like what Paul said, it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now presently live, the life I am now currently living, I live by a dynamic faith. I wake up with it, and I go to bed. I don't hang it up on a hook and walk out the door. It's a faith that I take with me. It's a living faith. I live by faith in the Son of God. I don't live by faith in myself. That's what the proverb is saying. There's a way that seems right to a man. There's a faith system that seems right to men, but that faith system will lead to death or separation from God. So that he will say, Depart from me, separate yourselves from me, I never knew you. So we want a faith that will not only benefit us, but will bring honor to the Lord. It's got to benefit us, or why would we do it? But if it doesn't honor the Lord, why would we do it? It's got to be both. So we can trust that there is such a kind of faith available to us. I have to believe that. The scriptures, as we just read in Hebrews 11, give us example after example of people who discovered that quality of faith. And when you travel back and look at their circumstances and the things that they had to overcome, it wasn't easy. To pick up and move several hundred miles, as Abraham was asked to do. To just and go to an area that you never saw before and start completely over. Well, we did a study on this, remember? The area that he was leaving was riddled with moon worship. And so he was surrounded by false gods. And they had several gods that were attributed to the moon. And so he was calling him out of that. Because apparently he knew better. Abraham knew better than to worship the moon. And so he saw that in Abraham and called him out of Ur and put him into the land of promise. And sure enough, what God saw in Abram rang true. He became that faithful warrior, that faithful person upon which he made a covenant. But we look at their situation. It wasn't easy for Abraham to do that. How easy do you suppose it was for Noah to separate his family out and obey this voice that commanded him to build an ark, and they'd never even seen rain? Do you think that might have been difficult? Do you think there might have been a little bit of a challenge there to do that? And to take the ridicule, to take the heat from the people around him? We have to look at their circumstances, as to what challenged their faith, and then we understand the magnitude of the faith they exerted. If you don't understand the pushback to that faith, the negative energy against that faith, we can't appreciate the faith that emerged. We have to appreciate all that we've been through, too. I mean, the things that we go through are for our good. I know that sometimes it's hard to believe. It's very difficult to believe sometimes how God can overcome some of the junk. But I think what he's doing is waiting and watching at our response, in our reaction, in our reflex. Have we learned anything at all in our journey? Or do we wake up and just hit the reset button and we have no faith to bring forward from yesterday? It's got to be a compound faith. It's got to be compounded. It's got to be all a cumulative faith, all of the lessons, and all the things that shape us, we have to drag out of bed with us, carry us into the new day. Or else it's not a living faith at all. So I appreciate this list as we go back to Hebrews 11. I certainly appreciate the men and the women that are named in this hall of faith. Rahab, let's look at her for just a moment. Not raised a Jew, not raised in Judaism, not raised to appreciate Yahweh. If she appreciated Yahweh at all, it would have to have been from a distance. Things she heard, reports. And certainly that was from her own testimony. We've heard what your God did for your God, not my God. But something about Rahab, regardless of her profession, she was a very smart person. She figured things out. She didn't put her confidence in the armed soldiers inside the city. to defend against these Jews. She figured it out. They had been conquering along the way. And it might have been that, in her mind, they might have been armies greater than her own men could provide. And so if they're knocking off other peoples that are equally as strong, if not stronger, than their own, she figured it out. It won't be long before you come knocking on our gate and knocking us off too. So she thought ahead. She didn't say if, she said when you guys come back. I want you to remember me in my household. It took a lot of courage for her to do this. Because if detected, she could have been executed for treason. Because Israel was an enemy. And her siding with the enemy and cutting a covenant and a deal with the enemy could have led to her execution. But she trusted that they would come back, that they would storm the city, conquer the city, and she wanted to make sure she and her family were safe. That's how much she believed in the unseen. So when we get back to our verse, in verse 1, now faith is the substance, it's the platform. Faith is the foundation of what we hope for. You can't hope for it without faith. It's the evidence of things not seen. Those armies of Israel, armed with their swords, in her mind, were as good as standing at the gate now. She wanted to make sure she was ready. Well, you know what? The Lord blessed her and rewarded her with a lineage where none is greater. She's in the line of Christ because of her faith. I'm amazed at the objects and the obstacles that these people had to face. But that faith was so important to them that they wouldn't let anything stand in the way. Kind of like that parable. You kids remember the parable of the person who made a living collecting pearls. He was in the pearl business. And so that person had, in their home, they had their shelves all lined with pearls, probably pearl necklaces, maybe some pearl bracelets, probably pearl earrings, probably pearl everything. Okay? Then one day, they came across this pearl that they had never seen the likes of it before. And immediately they saw that it was a genuine pearl, worth more than all the other strings, pearls that they had had in their house. So they scooped it all up and traded it in for the one pearl of great price. Remember that, Samuel? Remember that story? The pearl of great price. Lydia, remember that story about the pearls? I figured you would. Yeah. These people in Hebrews chapter 11 saw their faith as that pearl. And they weren't going to let anything stand in the way of obtaining something so precious as that. Now, on the other hand, throughout the pages of the Old Testament, we find people who didn't value that faith. And what's interesting is, in one time frame, in one lifespan, so that the circumstances were common to both, and so that all information was available to both, experiences similar, how one person could understand the importance of the faith and another person not. Sometimes in the very same family. Sometimes in one family who've experienced similar circumstances repeatedly. You find one discovering the pearl and the other not. Well, I referenced that verse, Andrew, and I still can't remember where it's at, where God said, I will take two of a city, I think it was, two of a city, in one of a family. In other words, when it all is said and done, the smoke from tribulation is cleared, and there's dead bodies everywhere, and there's people being scooped up and brought to Christ. Clearly a separation has taken place. When it's all said and done, He will have taken two of a family and one of a city. Clearly the remnant will have been chosen, a small remnant out of the masses of humanity. Keep in mind also that before Jesus even returns, before He actually returns, there will have been a mass depopulation through the Antichrist's wrath, but more so through God's wrath. The downsizing of the earth's population. But a preservation of those that are precious to Him. I want to hold on to my faith, no matter what happens. But when I say that, I have to be diligent, as we learned in our class today. I have to prop up that faith. I have to support that faith with a good support system. Or else that faith, if it's not protected like the walls of Jericho, of course, they were protected from other armies, but that's why they surround themselves with such thick walls, is for protection. My faith is the nucleus of my life, and if I don't protect it, if I don't buffer it and buttress it with a support system that's going to reinforce it and where it can thrive and feed and grow, then it's going to be a target. It already is a target, but it's going to be hit upon and hit upon and hit upon, and it's going to weaken. And so I don't want that. So I need to make sure that, as Peter told his readers, to make our calling and election stable. Stabilize it. It's not just good enough for today, but you're hedging against tomorrow. Tomorrow's hits, tomorrow's fiery darkness. It's a continuation, it's a constant effort. It's a demonstration of my faith through my works. So I appreciate these people here in the faith chapter because of what it took for them. And I suppose if someone were to write our story 100 years from now, I don't think we're going to be 100 years from now here. I don't think so. I'd be surprised. I would be shocked if we're still on this earth 100 years from now. I would be shocked. But if someone were to write our stories, I hope that we could easily be plugged in anywhere in between these great people as another indication, another example, fine example of faith of overcoming our challenges, our particular challenges, just like they overcame theirs. I would like to think that any one of us, we could plug our name, that Paul could have plugged our name in there had we lived back then, but more so as we live now. But that's really up to us. That last chapter is really up to us, isn't it? How we write our story, how we end our story is crucial. So let's end it by going to 1 Peter. Verse 3. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, which according to His abundant mercy hath begotten us again unto a lively hope, by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled, that fadeth not away, reserved in heaven for you. For you, who are kept by the power of God through faith unto salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time. Who will be among those that are salvaged? Wherein you greatly rejoice, in that revelation of the last time we greatly rejoice in the fact that God keeps us by His power. We greatly rejoice in His mercy. Though now, for a season, if necessary, if need be, you are in heaviness through manifold trials. That the trial of your faith, being much more precious than of gold that perisheth, or even that precious pearl, though it be tested with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. We've talked about this before, that what honor, what praise is he talking about? Well, I believe we have to go back to Matthew chapter 25 and pick up the picture that is presented there by Matthew. And that day when Jesus comes back and he calls his servants to reckon with them of what responsibility he had given to them. And they come to him one by one, and the one that had received the 5 talents and the 10 talents, they approached him, and he said, "You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over much. Enter into the joy of your Lord, thou good and faithful servant." There's your honor and your praise. Thou good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler. I will honor you with a position of rulership. So we have in that passage what Peter is talking about here. The praise and honor when Jesus returns. I know we all want to hear this. We all want this. But the question is, how badly do we want it? Verse 9, receiving the end of your faith, the outcome, that last chapter of your faith, even the salvation of your lives, your souls. And so, we need to possess a living, breathing, dynamic, energized faith every day. We need to prop it up. We need to provide a support system for that faith. The Holy Spirit was given to us as part of that support network. The Word of God, of course, given to us to feed on and support our faith. Our families, they're the ones that pick us up when we're down. And our brethren. This is our support network. This will help buttress our faith. And this is how it was designed. And so we're all in this together. We help one another through the trials. If we want to be helped, we help others. It's all one big family, one big support system. This is the kind of people that Jesus will be looking for to fulfill the positions of brother. Who loved him, who loved one another. Shall we say? Looks like 2:50.